Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers with me, Murray, your weekly 10-minute break from reality to think about ancient warfare in all its guises. You can, of course, and what we do here is we answer questions from listeners and viewers. You can ask us a question, you can send us an email, a postcard, you can comment on one of the previous videos or podcasts, and that will find its way to us. Even send us an email. And of course, you can back us on Patreon, one of three different levels. You've got Legionary, Optio, and Centurion, $1, $5, and $10. Just go to Patreon/Ancient Warfare Podcast. Now, today's question is an interesting one, which combines several of my interests. The one it doesn't is opera, but more of that anon. And this is from Darren. Darren says, "Hello, Murray. I'm a college library director who is co-sponsoring a war game involving a student tabletop game club and a student history club. In your opinion, what would be the best ancient battle or battles for a group of 18 to 20-year-old students? I'd like something fairly static or possessing limited maneuver for a beginning session. We can progress to more complicated engagements as we go along. I enjoy the show. Keep up the good work. Thank you." Thank you, Darren. Right. Well, I've been thinking about this because obviously, if you haven't guessed already, combines my love of ancient history with my love of wargaming, which you can't really see behind me. You can see little suggestions, but they're actually out of camera. I think that probably a short answer is the Battle of Marathon. More of that anon. Longer answer is it depends on the rule sets, but I suppose, and of course what miniatures you've got if you're going to use miniatures. But I think once you've agreed all those things, and a battle of limited maneuver that has enough in it that is it an important battle? Does it have that limited maneuver? Obviously, there's lots of important battles that have much more maneuver. Do we know enough about that battle to be able to reenact it on a tabletop? Marathon, obviously being such a vital battle in the sort of origins of Athenian self-confidence, there is a lot written about it. Of course, and I think I've spoken about it before, we still don't know what happened. We don't kind of work out exactly, hang on a minute, did that work? But I think in terms of a beginner war game for students who are both interested in wargaming and also history students. Now, they may be new to wargaming. What you've got, of course, is a Persian army in a block whose archery will blot out the sun. There is an account, I think I've mentioned, that actually talks about that happening at Marathon, not Thermopylae, which is more famous. So you've got that unit. You've got an army of 10,000 hoplites, 9,000 Athenians, and 1,000 Plataeans who are going to run at the Persians. You haven't got the complications of cavalry. Obviously, there is a complication about the fact that the Persians had cavalry, but they're none mentioned in the battle. So in that sense, you've got a battle which is really limited in terms of the number of the types of troops involved. And so, for instance, at the Battle of Marathon, we don't hear about light armed troops on either side. We don't hear about skirmishers or psiloi. We only hear about hoplites. Now, of course, as with so many reconstructions of ancient battle, it may well be that there were light armed troops and we just don't hear about them. But the way that most of our sources present the Battle of Marathon is it's hoplites versus Persians, nothing else. And so that, in a way, is a really good way of working out exactly what you can use on a tabletop. So, I mean, in terms of numbers, there's a big problem. We get bigger numbers for the Persians, which is going to unbalance a war game. And one of the things about wargaming, of course, is that generally speaking, in a war game, both sides need to have a chance. And so there's a balance which happens in war games, which really doesn't happen in warfare particularly often. And, one side wins either against the odds or with the odds stacked in its favor. It's also quite rare that you get a slogging match in historical battles. Obviously, you do. But generally speaking, there are factors, friction, as they're called in wargaming, which will favor one side or the other. So all of that basically says to me that the Battle of Marathon is relatively straightforward. You haven't got maneuvering. You've got one side raking and fleeing back to their ships. And so no one's trying to outflank anybody else. No one's trying to envelop anyone. Obviously more complicated battles like the Battle of Cannae, or even the battles of Alexander. You've got other things going on. Obviously, the battles of Alexander, you've got 40,000 Macedonians and their allies versus up to 1 million men. So how you wargame that, where Alexander, historically is going to win that battle and has a chance, is tricky in terms of rule sets and miniatures on the table. But I think the Battle of Marathon is a really good one. You probably want the Persians to be outnumbering the Athenians and Plataeans, but that outnumbering, and it would depend on the rule set you use, isn't going to unbalance. You almost want your Athenian hoplite to be worth 2 Persians in that sense. So, for instance, 10,000 Greeks and 20,000 Persians should give you a relatively good battle. You've got lots of historical interest in that battle that you can really get your teeth into, and that the students can really get their teeth into. We've got discussions, of course, about how warfare worked, what they did, the running, all of those things. And your gaming group, I read, was also playing role-playing games. And unlike lots of other ancient battles, which are relatively anonymous, we have generals, but not many other individuals are named within the battle. But one of the things about the Battle of Marathon, especially, is that there are actually personalized anecdotes of individuals in the battle line who saw things and had things happening, Apieselus going blind and things like that, and heroes being seen on the battlefield. So all of that sort of has an interest and a way of making that a really good introductory war game, I think. On a lesser scale, you could probably do individual combats a la the Iliad if you're going to do a more role-playing kind of game of an ancient battle rather than a war game type. But of course, you could do the war game and then zoom in and do the heroic combat in almost any battle. One of the strange things about ancient warfare is, even in the age of large armies with uniform tactics, one of the things our sources continue to do is focusing on the individual and the heroic actions of an individual. Normally a general, not always a general, but within that idea, you get that focus on that one person's exploits in a particular battle. And you can certainly do that in the Battle of Marathon. There's enough anecdotal evidence of lots and lots of different people's participation in the battle, whether it be Callimachus, whether it be, what's his name? Cynegeirus, is it? Aeschylus's brother. Aeschylus is running at the battle too. You've got lots and lots of anecdotes of individuals. So that can help and appeal to the imagination of a new wargamer. Just trying to think, you've got, Persians and Greeks, whereas some of the later battles, which are relatively straightforward, Greek versus Greek, so I suppose they're easier to build miniatures for. For instance, you could do the Battle of Delium, but that's got maneuver and circling around, which is probably a later battle. Mantinea, which is kind of a head-on clash, but they sort of miss each other, as according to Thucydides' account. And then there's a sort of a left turn by the Spartans. So I suppose in all of that, the reality of Marathon is it's pretty straightforward as reported. It's the Greeks massing, the Persians massing against them, and the Greeks charging them. So all in all, I think the Battle of Marathon is probably one of the best for an introductory war game. There's enough history and enough, peripheral stuff around it to make it really interesting to newcomers. Where would you progress to? I mean, obviously, if you want to fight the big battles, and Marathon obviously is very important, you can fight the battles of Alexander, you can fight the battles of, if you've got Romans, then you can fight the Battle of Cannae and the other battles of the Second Punic War. You could probably fight, if you wanted to, depending on the miniatures you have, which is another question, of course. You could probably fight the Battle of Boudica versus the Suetonius Paulinus in Britain, because you've got Roman legionaries, packed into a valley with nothing on either side. There's no maneuver there. And then the Britons charging them and wasting themselves against the Roman shield wall. So that's another relatively straightforward battle, the final battle of the Boudican revolt. in AD 61. Many others are, I mean, I would always argue for a late Roman battle, but they get complicated, whether it be the Battle of the Catalonian Plains or the Battle of Adrianople. There is a Battle of the Willows earlier, which is relatively straightforward. The Romans form into a testudo on the battlefield, and the Goths just charge and charge and charge, and it's kind of a draw. So there's that. But I think, based on everything I've said, I think Battle of Marathon ticks a lot of boxes for ancient wargaming. And I hope that answers your question, Darren. And we'll see you again for another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers. Thanks. Bye.